Christopher Columbus crossed the Atlantic in 1492, his ships carried diseases that decimated the Native American populations. Their unintended revenge, according to history, was to send back to Europe the scourge of syphilis. But the truth is not quite as simple or straightforward, and the history of syphilis may be far more complex. Wherever cultures meet and diverse people come in contact with each other, exchanges and mutations of diseases occur. Syphilis is no exception.
The intriguing thing, I think, about the syphilis-type organism is that it seems to be extraordinarily adaptable. It can adjust to many different types of environmental situations.
Because syphilis is transmitted sexually, there has always been a stigma attached to its name. Nobody wanted to take responsibility for its dirty existence, and throughout history, it has been pushed into the shadows. The one fact that has generally been agreed upon, however, is that the disease originated in the New World and was only brought back to Europe in the 1490s. But now, a startling new archaeological find has brought into question the common theory about the origin of the disease. Paleopathologist Charlotte Roberts has discovered a skeleton that she believes will rewrite history and challenge the accepted wisdom about where syphilis came from and how it spread. In the closing years of the 15th century, Joseph Grunpeck, a young scholar, described a new disease that was sweeping through Europe.
In recent times, I have seen a disease which is so cruel, so distressing, so appalling, that until now, nothing so horrifying, nothing more terrible or disgusting has ever been known on this earth.
The outbreak Grunpeck witnessed was among Spanish soldiers taking part in a 1495 siege of Naples, Italy.
Some had become so repugnant, left in the open air on the battlefield, they hoped to die. Others moaned and wept and uttered heart-rending cries because of the ulceration of their male organ.
Grunpeck's record was historically important because it was the earliest unchallenged documentation of syphilis that had ever been found. His gruesome description accurately portrayed the distinct stages of the disease. Charlotte Roberts has studied syphilis in detail, and her modern knowledge matches remarkably well with Grunpeck's 500-year-old observations.
The first stage of the disease really just involves ulceration at the site of infection, so things like genital ulcers.
The swelling of the glands was followed by an abscess from which a putrid-smelling pus flowed for 4 months.
The second stage, which occurs about 3 to 6 months after infection, you get a generalised rash.
They experienced intense pains in head and bones, and soon boils appeared all over the body.
It's the third phase, where you get considerable ulceration on the skin. The person wouldn't be feeling too good, I don't think, and wouldn't look very nice either. You can relate the bone lesions quite nicely to ulcerations of the skin. Imagine a boil or an ulcer on the skin, and that's tracking down to these lesions on the skull. Not very nice. And I would think if you've got an infectious lesion that's active in the mouth, you're going to have somebody who's got a pretty awful bad breath. If you can imagine this person with these bones inside their body, you would expect swelling, quite a lot of pain and heat just as a result of inflammation. The other thing that you get in the third phase of syphilis is what they call general paralysis of the insane.
And syphilis caused more than just pain and physical suffering. It also brought shame on those who contracted it. In the fervently religious Christian Europe of the time, this new disease represented the wrath of God, punishing the wicked for their decadence and immorality. When Grunpeck described the horrible symptoms at the end of the 15th century, no one knew where syphilis had come from, and of course, nobody wanted to accept it as their own. Grunpeck called it the French disease, the French called it the Neapolitan disease, and the Germans called it the Spanish itch. But it was a Portuguese doctor who first made the connection to the New World. He discovered that Columbus's crew had many of the same symptoms described by Grunpeck. Clearly, he thought, the men had contracted the disease from native women they had sexual relations with during their travels. The blame had been laid, and in the 500 years since, scientists have amassed much evidence to support the doctor's theory that syphilis had its origins in the Americas. George Armelagos is a bioarchaeologist at Emory University, a leading expert in his field. He has been looking for signs of syphilis in American bones for 30 years. He believes his results are conclusive.
What I found is that there's all kinds of evidence of the lesions in the New World prior to Columbus, and it continues on after Columbus. You go into the Old World, you find hardly any evidence at all. I looked from Florida all the way up to Ohio, from the Atlantic Ocean to the Mississippi River, and there was just incredible numbers of cases of this syphilis-like lesion.
His discoveries were persuasive because they were not limited to the bones of just a few people. Armelagos found whole communities with signs of this highly contagious disease.
Now, what I would expect to find is not only the fact that you find it within an individual, which we find many isolated cases, but we find it within a population and within a region. If these people are in social contact, they're in sexual contact, and so the disease should be widespread.
Whole communities with signs of the disease would mean that the infection was being passed from person to person. In addition to the evidence that Armelagos has collected, new finds in the Dominican Republic, site of the first contact between Columbus's crew and the native Taino Indians, are adding credence to the theory that syphilis originated in the New World. Bruce Rothschild has been working with local experts assessing skeletons from various pre-Columbian sites.
I mean venereal syphilis. I'm using it to...
He is hoping evidence of syphilis in the bones will put the history of the disease into context.
There are well-dated sites in the Dominican Republic, and among these sites are some which are dated to the time just prior to Columbus, from 500 to 1,000 years ago. And this is exactly the timing that we need to know whether syphilis existed. Because if we find syphilis in these bones, then we know the people who met Columbus are the people who had syphilis, and therefore Columbus and his crew had the opportunity to interact with people with syphilis, and therefore opportunity to contract the disease and to spread it back eventually to Europe.
In the coastal town of La Caleta, an earlier excavation of a pre-Columbian site had revealed some well-preserved old bones. They had been left in place, protected by a small museum that was built around them. Rothschild finds that the bones here, and in a number of other sites on the island, show definite signs of syphilis. The port city of Hull is located on the northeast coast of England. Once a bustling shipping community, It took on an important role to archaeologists in 1994. That was the year the city planners decided to build a new court in the center of town. Before they began laying the foundation, however, they gave local archaeologists an opportunity to survey the site. Working within a very limited time frame, the team toiled day and night to excavate what they suspected were the remains of a medieval friary. Within months, they had unearthed more than 240 skeletons and countless artifacts. At first, the relics helped them paint a picture of everyday life in a typical friary within a medieval port city. A world of religion, riches, medicine, and morality.